So good afternoon. Very, very warm welcome to all of you to Doctoral Thesis Defense at Estonian Business School. I'm very happy and privileged to announce Ms. Hala Abdelgaffar's doctoral thesis defense today. On the title is Responsible Management Education, Practices, Challenges and Prospects. This doctoral thesis has been supervised by Professor Olav Aarna with Estonian Business School and by Associate Professor Kooskora, also with Estonian Business School. And we are privileged and very happy to have the opponents to this dissertation, Professor Ragnar Örtenblad from Norway, from University of Agder, and Dr. Nikodemus Solitander with Hanken School of Economics in Helsinki in Finland. In addition to the two opponents who are also on the committee, me, Riina Koris, I will be the third member of the committee, and just a very brief introduction. An associate professor with the Department of Marketing and Communication at Estonian Business School, have been with the school longer than I care to remember, but always very happy. So the agenda today is that after I have done the introduction, I will give the floor to my good colleague Kaisa Lindenburg, an invaluable help during the entire process. She will introduce the doctoral candidate, her CV and more. This is followed by Hela's presentation of her thesis. And she will take about 20 minutes to introduce her very important and big work. After that, the two opponents, Professor Örtenblad and Dr. Solitander, will take up the debate, one after the other, not at the same time. And we're looking for a very good academic debate, one to remember. This would then be followed by questions by the Defense Committee members, which is me, as well as questions from the audience. And then we will also have brief words from the two supervisors of the doctoral candidates. We will then have a short break to discuss the work, the three of us, the committee members, and we will vote for the result of the thesis and the defense. We will do it in a, so to say, separate secret room, and after we've done that and I will have the break finished, we will resume in this to announce the votes of the results of the voting, and yeah, and then it will be time for Hela's final words on this, on the entire journey before she can close this very important chapter. Right. So, also, if anybody has any questions for the doctoral candidate, it would be great if you could send those to Kaisa Lindenburg's team address. And yeah, I think we're good to go. So Kaisa, whenever you're ready to introduce Hala, the screen is all yours.
Thank you, Riina. Honorable Chairman of the committee, members of the committee, supervisors, and the defender. Hala Abdelgaffar has presented all the documents that are necessary according to the procedure for successful completion of the doctoral program and the defense of EBS. She has presented the thesis titled Responsible Management Education, Practices, Challenges and Prospects. The set of documents which Hala Abdelgaffar has presented also contains a copy of her official graduation academic record from the American University in Cairo. Hala Abdelgaffar has fulfilled the requirements of the curriculum of doctoral studies in management to defend the doctoral thesis and acquired the necessary amount of credit points. On February 21st, 2021, the Research and Development Council of the Estonian Business School admitted Hala Abdelgaffar to defend the dissertation for the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in Management. The board also set the date of the defense. The defense committee of Hala Abdelgaffar's doctoral thesis was confirmed with Rector's Decree number 11U on April 14, 2021. Hala Abdelgaffar has presented her academic CV. It is the following. She was born in Cairo, Egypt on November 27, 1969. She received the Master of the Arts degree in teaching English as a foreign language from the American University in Cairo. Hala Abdelgaffar was enrolled as a doctoral student in Estonian Business School in 2016 and has by now completed the program. She started her career as faculty at the School of Arts in the English Language and Literature Department. Alongside her academic career, she has been offering professional training and development to national and international corporations. She also co-partners and manages a business development and educational consultancy since 2014. Hala Abdelgaffar has published 10 academic papers. The dissertation is based on 3 publications from 2019, 2020, and 2021. This is it from my part. Let me give the floor back to Riina.
Is it good now? Sorry, apologies. So thank you, Kaisa, for the introduction. And I'm very, very happy to give the screen now. I wish it was the floor, but it is the screen to Hala to present her work. So Hala, you've done a lot of work now. I think it's the time to enjoy it whenever you're ready.
Now?
Now is it good?
Yeah.
Now it's good.
Yeah, okay. So my topic is responsible management education, practices, challenges, and prospects. Responsible management education emerged with the need for more responsible and ethical practices, and in resistance to many ill social and managerial practices, such as the irresponsible and unethical practices of businesses and organizational leaders, leading up to the 2008 financial crisis and other ecological disasters. It was also a resistance to theories and business models based on the epistemological philosophies of neoliberalization, marketization, new managerialism, and also the need to change the corporatization, top-down management of business schools, and its and the way that management education is disconnected from societal issues. This led basically to the emergence of a global educational reform and several initiatives, leading to introduction of certain changes and developments like the excellence framework and the metrics culture, which focused on performance metrics and some of the older trends of management. However, that the United Nations introduced the UNESCO actually in 2014 introduced the Education for Sustainable Development, directed at all levels of education to introduce sustainability into education, and later. With a more emphasized focus on business education, there emerged responsible management education with the aim of preparing the next generation of management professionals with the ethical and moral values, the corporate social responsibility mindset, and and the corporate social responsibility mindset. Basically, responsible management education aims to uphold the sustainable corporate responsibility rooted in the post-materialist values of social equity, ecological protection, and economic viability, or what is called the triple bottom line. It also aims to develop accountability and responsiveness towards the United Nations 17 Global Sustainable Development Goals developed by the United Nations Global Compact, in line with also the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In addition to those, the United Nations Global Compact introduced the principles of responsible management education, which is the largest initiative to organize the relationship between the United Nations and business schools and the learning community in order to guide the transformation of management education, research, and thought leadership. Its 6 principles are, as listed here, purpose, values, method, research, partnership, and dialogue. The problem is responsible management education is not fully integrated into business school practices, unfortunately, despite all of these initiatives. Not in most business school practices. In many schools. And the broad principles of the responsible management education have led to invariable, inconsistent, and partial adoption of responsible management education. And also, PRIME is based on a localized and progressive Western model that may not fit with non-Western schools to some extent. Moreover, many schools have focused on compliance with regulatory and accreditation bodies and given far little focus on integrating ethics, corporate social responsibility, and sustainability. And this has led to more limited and compartmentalized integration of sustainability into management education. There still remains, professors and management education professors still continue to propagate business models and theories based on neoliberalization, marketization, and new managerialism, and also outdated approaches to business and society. Generally, responsible management education is continuously being constructed and reconstructed. It's growing as a field. And this explains why there may not be a comprehensive model or holistic framework with specific dimensions to guide responsible management education adoption. In addition, there is scant research on stakeholders, how stakeholders perceive and practice responsible management education. In the past, responsible management education has been observed through various research lenses, such as the neoclassical economics lens, the reflexivity lens, the social lens, and the social practices lens. The social practices lens is the lens that I'm using in my study of responsible management education. This lens leverages value creation and academic performance by employing social practices that are shaped by individual agency within a specific social structure or context. Researchers in the past have used this lens, and in addition to institutional theory, to examine the different structural changes and institutional pressures governing the adoption of responsible management education. But in my present research, I've adopted the social and responsible practices lens by examining present contextualized responsible management education practices in the literature and those observed by academics as key stakeholders and change agents, institutional entrepreneurs, and partners in the RME adoption process. And sorry. So my research objective was to examine the practices, challenges, and expected outcomes of responsible management adoption and how responsible management education is implemented or adopted in business schools. This led me to do two or three empirical studies, actually. The first empirical study examined the readiness and challenges of responsible management adoption. It's a qualitative exploratory study examining 3 Egyptian public business schools using focus group interviews with 168 academics. The second empirical study also it inquires about, the first one inquired about readiness and challenges that academics face when adopting responsible management education, and the second investigates their perception, the academic people's perception of the importance of responsible management education and the motivations to adopt it. And it also was a qualitative exploratory study of the same schools, but due to attrition, a lower number of academics participated. The third study is a systematic literature review of the period between 2011 and 2020. It aimed at gaining a conceptualization of responsible management education and understanding its drivers, its integration in different schools, and challenges and barriers to its adoption. The research design of the dissertation is based on a multiple case study design, and the cases in the 2 qualitative exploratory studies are similar in various dimensions. They're similar in organizational context, geographic location, the data collection method. There's semi-structured interviews in focus groups. The subjects, they're academics. The size, all 3 schools are very large in size, with a combined population of almost 33,000 students. And they are large in terms, they are considered large by definition, as they offer undergraduate, master's, and doctoral programs. They are not internationally accredited. The data source was the focus group interviews and observations in my experience. And the research unit was Egypt. Why Egypt? Because Egypt is, as many other non-Western business schools attempting to adopt responsible management education, these are underrepresented in the literature. Egypt has the vision, the Egypt Vision 2030, which is in line with the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Yet there has been no RME adoption in most public business schools. And finally, the data was accessible to me as an Egyptian, and I had familiarity with the context. Findings of the first empirical study revealed that there are 3 challenges that business schools in the targeted context that I'm studying need to address to successfully implement RME. The first are related to functional barriers, such as insufficient funds and bureaucracy. The second is related to structural, procedural barriers, such as absence of RME plans, channels for communication, cross-institutional collaboration plans or initiatives, and academic barriers such as lack of cross-disciplinary research groups or a sustainability agenda. Findings of the second empirical study revealed that there are 3 factors that motivate or encourage business schools to adopt responsible management education in the targeted schools that I'm studying. The first factor is the local extrinsic driver. There are many SDGs, such as climate change, corruption, cultural diversity, limited resources that drive academics to want to solve them. There are local intrinsic drivers, such as the existence of academic talent, faculty motivation, RME as a perceived priority, and other research opportunities. There are other global extrinsic drivers, like the 2030 Agenda, of course, accreditation pressures, initiatives by NGOs, international internations like PRIME, and international research and study abroad opportunities that are affordable. Findings of the third study, or the literature review, revealed various consistencies, but I can't cover everything in this presentation, but I chose to focus on the 2 main trends in the literature. Most of the studies are either, to my knowledge, learner-oriented or management-oriented. Learner-oriented were focused on replacing this opportunistic, capitalist, neoliberal, and sometimes value-neutral approaches with more ethical, corporate social responsibility, sustainability in curricular research and academic activities. The management-oriented was more focused on how schools embed ethics and social responsibility and sustainability into their instrumental operational practices, and how schools respond, or what their responsibility is towards local and global communities. The outcome of my research, whether they are the publications or readings and my personal reflection, have led to a model for responsible management adoption. The model consists of 3 levels. The first is related to knowledge sharing and creation. This dimension focuses on developing the knowledge, skills, and tools that contribute to social, economic, ecological, and human welfare. And this is by integrating ethics, corporate social responsibility, and sustainability, and human welfare or humanistic concerns into curricular, extracurricular, and research activities and content. The second is related to responsible management, and this is more focused on how schools can integrate sustainability or responsibility, of course, ethics and other humanitarian concerns in campus operations, school performance, and internal for the benefit of internal stakeholders, and of course external stakeholders. The third level is focused on the agency of schools in transforming responsible management education values into action by enacting the values to respond to local and global issues. The outcome of the model is in more detail is shared as such. One contribution of this model is that it can be a pragmatic tool for mainstreaming responsible management education. What is new is that it has introduced new dimensions, specifically after the COVID and with the ethical and humanitarian emerging concerns and issues. I chose to add this final dimension that refers to the need to respond to the local and global needs and issues in every country. The contribution of my study, in terms of empirical studies, I've examined RME in a nascent practice, as a nascent practice in public business schools in Egypt. The studies fill the need for responsible management education research in non-Western context, and they highlight the role of agency and context as determinants of responsible management education adoption, success of this adoption. The systematic literature review fills the gap for the time frame covered and reveals RME adopted practices and challenges on the global perspective. The RME model that is suggested in this study is considered a pragmatic tool to help visualize and understand and also monitor the integration and implementation of RME. It has holistic dimensions in terms of internal and external adoption within the business school and beyond. Other contributions are contribution to theory. According to stakeholder theory, the most important aim of any organization is to achieve value maximization and to maintain adequate relations with stakeholders. Other scholars like Carlson framed it as maximizing the welfare of all stakeholders. Dubini and Lofman maintained the importance of meeting individual and group stakeholder needs. This is somehow also emphasized in the PRIME principles, Principle 6, that says PRIME aims to facilitate and support dialogue, debate among interested groups and stakeholders on critical issues. However, when observing RME through the stakeholder lens, an inconsistency is observed. Some stakeholders, such as resisting, disinterested, and unknowledgeable academics or policymakers and irresponsible corporations, can impede rather than support the RME adoption. And this has been voiced by the participants in the empirical studies. It has been advised that instead of accommodating all their needs, it's very important to have stakeholder socialization, consensus, collaboration, and co-construction of knowledge on the purpose and value and essence of responsible management education. Another contribution to theory is in terms of responsible management theory that assumes that to support sustainable business, society, and environment, as mentioned by most scholars in the literature. Also, the PRIME Principle 1 maintains that PRIME aims to generate a sustainable value for business society at large and work for an inclusive and sustainable global economy. However, RME should extend beyond that to integrate not only sustainability, but also ethics, responsibility, and humanitarian value, not only at the global level, but at the local and global level, by preventing, mitigating, and solving real-life societal problems and grand challenges. So I would add to the ethics, corporate social responsibility, sustainability, the humanitarian values. And this has led me to redefine RME and even change my definition that is already out in my dissertation as follows. Responsible management education is the education, research, community outreach, and enterprise activities in the areas of ethics, sustainability, social responsibility, and human welfare, which business schools engage with relevant stakeholders to create global and local and global value. Finally, there are a couple of limitations to my study. First was that it only focused on peer-reviewed articles. Second, it used focus groups and perception data, which may have limited my ability to have control over the interaction and data produced. Also, I only focused on one group of the RME stakeholders, which are reception of academics. So it can be advisable in the future that future researchers think of including other factors like geographic, cultural, political, economic, and underrepresented areas to fully understand the RME context and needs and barriers and solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Hala. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, time-wise, very well managed, I suppose. And I am now happy to move our event to what I consider and have always considered to be the most valuable and fascinating and interesting part of any dissertation defense. So the academic debate with Professor Örtenblad and with Dr. Solitander. So we have allocated about 25 to 30 minutes per each opponent. So I will try to keep a close watch on the time. And Anders, if you could start, and then Nikodemus will take over. So whenever you're ready, we're very much looking forward to it.
Yes, thank you for inviting me as an opponent and to be in the committee for this very interesting PhD thesis. Hala, you have written about a very, very important subject. And I think you have really tried here to, if I may put it like this, namely to help to make the world a little bit of a better place, which I also happen to believe is the ultimate aim of any higher education. So I think you have done something really good here. I wanted to start to say that. The main thing I would like you or us to discuss a little bit, it's about rationality and irrationality when it comes to implications. The way forward for business schools in the world, in particular in Egypt, of course. But before that, I feel a need to bring up something which is not the most important thing in a PhD thesis, but it is important, namely details. Details when it comes to references, etc. And I am bringing it up also as the first thing, because this was also the only thing when I got this manuscript. That was the only thing I asked you to improve. So for this reason, I wanted us all to see page number 57, if this please could be arranged by the Secretariat. Page number 57. Good, thank you very much. We can here see on this page examples of, I mean, this is details, but nevertheless important in research and also in a PhD thesis. If you look,
what page is this? Because it's not consistent with the copy I have. What page again?
This is page 57.
57.
And I am not talking, I am talking about the actual pages in not in the file,
not
the actual thesis.
Okay. All right, now I understand.
Right.
Yes.
As I was told to do. And as you can see here, there are sometimes you have a comma after before et al. and sometimes you haven't. At least in my version. Are we actually on page 57?
Yes.
We are, yes. We are, Anders. Go ahead.
Okay. In the version I have, which I downloaded the other day, there is sometimes a comma after the family name before et al. Sometimes there is not. Sometimes you write and between two authors. Sometimes you use this symbol. To take an example.
Yeah, it's true. I missed it here after Greenberg.
Well, there are lots of such. I mean, we can look at page 162, please.
God.
I mean, I'm just taking a very
Yes.
few examples. Please, 162.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing here. Sometimes you use and between authors. Sometimes you use this and sign. And at the end of the page, you have placed Yin's two references in a reverse order that what at least I am used to. You start with the oldest. On page 39, you use you write under the heading 116, you write the idea of the principles for management education instead of principles for responsible management education. So my question to know to
yeah, I'm sorry. Oh.
Is details and consistency is an important thing in research.
I totally agree.
So how could this happen?
It's I guess mislooked.
Yes, after all,
negligence on my part, I guess.
I pointed out a few examples in the when I first got the manuscript, so I was a little bit surprised.
Yeah,
yes.
I have no explanation. I think having read it several times, sometimes my eyes miss certain things.
So how
I think
would you
I need to have more accurate.
Yeah.
I should have had a more accurate scanning of all details. Unfortunately, that didn't.
If you now will get your PhD today, if the committee votes for that it is okay, will you then in the future promise to be more accurate when it comes to details? I can't hear or see you now,
I don't know
Hala.
why I've been frozen, but definitely yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Then we can leave that point. Now we go to a more important thing which I wanted to discuss with you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Your pic is sometimes frozen. Can you hear me,
okay.
Hala? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but
Hala, I think you're breaking up. Can you hear me when I speak? It's Riina. Anders, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, Hala, can you hear me when I talk?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, but but something happened at some point. So maybe we can continue.
I refreshed the screen. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened.
Perfect. So carry on, Anders. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I promise to change anything that requires to be changed. Definitely. I totally agree that they are unacceptable mistakes on my part.
Good answer. the more important thing I wanted to discuss with you, which I also struggle with in my research. You kind of, how shall I express it? You suggest how business schools, especially in Egypt, should go ahead to implement in practice this responsible management education. This is how I read your thesis, and it's very interesting. It is generally well done, etc. But what I wanted to discuss with you is, I think a problem that we all have, at least I also have it in my research. You bring up another concept a few times. You don't go really into depth with it, but a few times you bring up the concept of decoupling. I have worked at several business schools. I am an old person now, relatively old I am, at least. But thank you, Hala, for not agreeing. So I might be a little bit cynical, but I don't any longer believe in business schools when they, for instance, or the deans, they claim that now we are going to implement this student-centered learning or liberal education, or for instance, that we are now going to implement in practice so that our students will become independent learners. I don't any longer, if I ever believed in it, I don't believe in it anymore, because I think it's only talk, as you also mentioned a few times. I mean, this decoupling, and you claim that you want to avoid this, but what is it that makes your thesis, if we now give it to the business schools in Egypt and other places, why does it have a larger chance of being used in practice to actually accomplish this thing, which I agree with you is important, responsible management education?
I think one of the most important aspects of this adoption is to basically, am I frozen or can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Please go on.
Okay. So yeah, is to diagnose the situation, to understand what the context is, what barriers, challenges, enablers, what the traditional SWOT analysis, but what the situation is on the ground, in order to see who is with me and who is against me. And if people are against me, who are these people? Will they interfere in the process directly or indirectly? Is it a matter of socializing them into understanding what the process is? Like, for instance, many of the teaching professionals don't know how to develop materials that are, I don't know, sustainable or building on the moral values and critical thinking and systems thinking, systems theories and thinking, and so they integrate it superficially into their texts instead of creating these interactive action learning approaches that also allow opportunities for interdisciplinary cooperation, transdisciplinary cooperation. I think that the real issue is business schools, or basically academics, don't know how to do it, don't know how to go about it. The model kind of like frames the key dimensions to approach, but it's really important to understand what each dimension is, and also look at good practices, because there are business schools out there that have implemented responsible management education quite well, and they have exemplar practices and approaches that have been very successful. I don't want to mention names, but I had been doing another study, an article, going over the prime signatories and their reports and how they're reporting back whether on their integration practices and on their successes. Some of these schools really conveyed very realistic, down-to-earth connection with real-life problems. They created groups that would tackle issues in the local community and also in the global community. So they were communicating and cross-collaborating with other institutions outside their country and even outside the continent. And they were sending students to study abroad to understand different contexts, to troubleshoot problems in their locale, to understand the diversity and the need to integrate different ideas and different approaches. And so I believe that when schools decouple, or when schools go off track on their RME agenda, it's most probably either because of lack of the knowledge or the know-how, or lack of finances and funding. Or sometimes it could be like other institutional barriers, like needs for approval or needs for certain administrative facilities or other issues. But the key issue is knowledge, because even if you don't have enough financing, which happens in some schools in Egypt as a developing country, there are initiatives in which business schools have collaborated with industry partners, with other corporate entities, even with the government in projects. And they've developed business models, solutions. They've developed small initiatives and even collaborations to solve certain local issues in underprivileged areas. So there are opportunities to make change, but we just need to tackle where the problem lies.
But okay, I hear you. As I understand you, you are saying that knowledge and good arguments should be enough. But let me take another example. I have just, if I may advertise it a little bit, I have just published an anthology, which I edited, on bad leadership. The main question for that anthology was, why are there so many bad leaders when we know so much about leadership? You know, there is lots, huge amounts, millions of books about leadership, leadership consultants, research, endless, but still there are so extremely many bad leaders, at least as I formulate it in the book. That could be discussed, of course. But I do think that you agree with me when I'm saying that decoupling happens. And I mean, you seem then to believe in good arguments and knowledge, but don't we already have knowledge about how to include ethics, sustainability, etc. in management education? Yeah, please say.
With regards to knowledge, I don't mean knowledge in books and theories, and I'm talking about the knowledge divide. You can have everything in theory and concepts, but how can this knowledge be transformed into practice? And this is, I think, the problem with most business schools today is that there's this gap between the market needs, the societal needs, even ethical and moral values and what is being taught in the business school. We're not able to connect our graduates with the real life. I mean, it's easy to teach theories in vacuum, but when they're applied to a hands-on action learning approach with problem solving, case studies, on-site action and deliberation, communication with different stakeholders, understanding their misconceptions, their approaches, how to fix them. So you're graduating leaders who would be change agents, not simply leaders that have the knowledge, but it's like divided. And once they go into business, they're more overwhelmed by issues of profit maximization, of other priorities than to maintain good moral values.
But I mean, take myself as an example, as an individual. I know that it is not good for me to eat sugar, sweets, but I do it nevertheless. I mean, I know it. But so how can you just say that? Okay, if they know, if we can. Okay, it's not only knowledge in books, but it has to be practice. I can agree with this. I usually try to involve practice in my own teaching at the business school where I currently am working. But I mean, I think that maybe you could have dealt with this in your thesis. I mean, because it seems to me that
can I comment?
Yes, but please let me finish my question.
Sure.
Comment maybe. It seems to me that you have some kind of rational perspective of human beings. That if they hear good arguments, if they are presented in an understandable way to knowledge, then they will change. But I mean, if this was so, then we would not have any drug addicts in the world. We would not have any wars. We would not have any. I maybe would have suggested that you could have included maybe a little bit about this reasoning. Please go ahead.
I think part of the model consists of the idea of responsible management. And responsible management means part of it is empowering and giving the authority, the autonomy to academics to develop and create new knowledge that can be have this connection between theory and practice. But basically, it also means supporting them and motivating them. That there have to be incentives for them to develop curricula, to go out of their way and develop action learning schemes and projects, to supervise cross-continental, collaboration and partnership with different stakeholders in different institutions. I mean, this is effort. I see the key change agent is the academician, and they are so they're put in a disadvantaged situation so that they're not. I mean, it's like the sugar. It's there. Nobody's going to prevent me from eating it. There's no motivation to not eat it, so I'm going to eat this sugary thing, and I'm going to enjoy myself. It's the same with academicians who just go on teaching the way they traditionally have been teaching. They don't develop innovative or creative or responsible and responsive material that connects their students with real life issues and how to change the status quo. We don't want to graduate students who just go back into the cycle of irresponsibility and to just sit back and say, well, there's nothing in it for me. We need to explain the motives for these moral values, because as I said, there are different lenses to study RME. One of them focuses on financially or economically, it is viable for business schools to invest in sustainability, for businesses to invest in sustainability, for nations to invest in sustainability. Maybe this is the connection that we want to show, that there are financial benefits, there are humanitarian benefits, there are ethical benefits, there are various types of benefits. And so when I understand these benefits, these could be motivators for change.
My final comment then, and then I will rest my case. My final comment then, or suggestion, would be I would like to read an article that you can write after your PhD. Responsible management education, making it happen in practice, where
Yeah,
you
sure.
maybe can do action research and turn a business school in Egypt that is currently not practicing responsible management education into a truly responsible business school that in practice practices responsible management education. I would love to read that.
Yeah, I would like the financial backing to do that. I guess
I can't help you there, but maybe there is any responsible business school somewhere in the world, who maybe Estonia Business School, I don't know, that wants to support you. But in any case, thank you for a nice discussion, and I think I rest my case for now here, and I leave the word back to Riina and the next opponent.
Okay, thank you, Anders. Super nice.
Thank you so much.
I felt during the debate that I wanted to say something. I was thinking about whether I should, but then I actually think that I should. You know, Professor Örtenblad has effectively taught me everything I know about publishing. So everything I have done is actually his responsibility, and also things that I haven't done. But one thing I'm really good at is commas. Okay, my first paper that I co-authored with him, he sent back to me the final version and told me, Riina, in one place in the reference list, and we had about 100 references, there is a comma missing. Go and find it. First, I thought this is not happening, okay? But the result was that I think I'm now very, very, very good at formatting, and I completely agree that consistency is very important, particularly if you want to publish in the future. It's not just a pretentious thing. It is actually very important. So Anders, in addition to that, thank you for a very good debate. Hala, thank you. And I'm very happy now and also looking very much forward to Dr. Solitander's debate. So there you go, whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Riina, and thank you, Hala, for giving me this really intriguing opportunity to comment and debate, as you call it, a very, I would say, a very important topic that the candidate has chosen to focus on. As an academic, it's always a little bit of a, I would say, a dual sword in a sense to read research that on the one hand is very important because, as Hala herself says, there is this notion of praxis and the need for changing the very sort of foundations that we ourselves as academics are part of producing, in a sense, both in terms of knowledge that we are producing in our research, but also the kind of praxis, as she calls it, that we do in our administrative work at schools, how we interact with accreditations, or indeed what kind of things we then actually choose to teach our students, and also how we teach our students, meaning the more sort of pedagogical issues around it. And the duality, of course, comes from the fact that the kind of work that Hala has done in her thesis almost becomes a little bit of an autoethnography, in a sense. Autoethnography meaning that, you know, the things that you study are almost part of the very, you know, day-to-day reality that you yourself are in. And thus, when you read it, you recognize the problems on the one hand, exactly as my colleague Anders said, you can recognize yourself in it, but also it becomes hard to, on a deeper level, engage in fundamental critique of the kind of praxis that you yourself are involved in, if that is the kind of things that we reproduce in our teaching, or the kind of reproduction that we do in our research, especially if the questions are about the fundamental societal value that we might produce or we might not produce, or then the societal value that we might actually destroy by teaching certain things in our daily teaching. So yes, it has been a privilege at the same time, since the topic is the business school where we are all positioned in, it becomes really an exercise in what Hala, drawing on other scholars, calls reflexivity. And Hala, I will start with going a little bit deeper into this notion of reflexivity, since you yourself utilize that terminology. And in my questions, since what we as reviewers are not doing, for those who are not aware of it, is that we are not, in a sense, reviewing the articles that Hala has already published that make, in a sense, the fundament of her whole thesis. That's, in a sense, where the whole sort of beef of her research is done. What we are looking at is more the kind of sense-making, the holistic part of the thesis, the sort of enwrapping text that she has produced around those articles, in a sense. And that kind of text usually invites to deeper reflexivity. Now, I think my role is to go even deeper in that reflexivity and pull out some things that might not be evident in the thesis, even though you operate with these kind of things as reflexivity and such. So I will begin my comments with a particular concept that you yourself use. You use the concepts of praxis in several places in your thesis. I don't think you ever give a very clear definition or indicate very clearly to the reader whom you are drawing on, and if we are to understand praxis from, you know, the kind of perspective that I'm used to. My own background is indeed in critical sort of management studies, critical management education studies, and also responsible management education studies, as is the sort of focus of Hala's whole research. And for me, praxis means something very particular. It means, in a sense, the intersection of action and reflection, drawing usually on, for example, the work of pedagogues such as Paulo Freire, when he says that, you know, it is not enough for people to come together in a kind of Socratean dialogue in order to gain knowledge of their social reality. They must sort of act upon this knowledge in their own context and in their own environment in order to critically reflect upon their own reality, but more importantly, to transform their own reality through further action and critical reflection. So the intersection between action and reflection makes praxis. So my first question is, in a sense, very clear. Is this how you use praxis in your thesis? And if the answer is no, then you can tell me how you understand praxis yourself.
Actually, I didn't deal in depth with the word praxis in my thesis. But as I understand it, it is how action is reflected in practices. And so I guess I do this with my students every time and then. We actually perform a task, and then we go back and reflect on performance of the task, learning outcomes, and we deliberate different issues that were either misunderstood or need to be further improved on. So
okay.
I guess it has more to do with this critical reflexivity. Pardon?
Yeah, exactly. So critical reflexivity. But I think you make a point in your thesis of actually not using the word reflection, rather you use reflexivity. And for me, in a sense, the change or the difference between reflection and reflexivity is, in a sense, this imperative for change and also self-critique, not making sense building up structures as it is in reflection, that, you make structures of different things that you see. In reflexivity is more about, challenging the most sort of sacred and fundamental knowledge that you have. That is usually the sort of definition of reflexivity as opposed to reflection. And it also ties, in a sense, to praxis. And praxis, we can go back to Marx's thesis on Feuerbach, when he says that philosophers have insofar only interpreted the world in various ways, but the point is to change it. So I come back, in a sense, to this notion of transformation and transformativity, no matter if we talk of that through reflexivity or we talk that to praxis. My point here is that I think you also make a point in your thesis about the need for transformation. Is that correct? So when you say that it's about having a dialogue, you are actually not stopping at that, because you say that that is not enough. We need to go beyond that. So is that correct?
Yeah, I think there has to be an ongoing dialogue on a personal level, by reflecting and thinking reflexively of my practices, how to develop them, how to make them more relevant and more effective. And at the same time, there has to be an ongoing dialogue with everything around me, with theories that are coming up, with events that are happening, with stakeholder opinions and understandings of different issues. I think as an academic, you can't just stop with a certain understanding or a certain conceptualization, even of responsible management education. It's a growing field. It's constantly being restructured and redefined. And as an academic, there has to be my understanding of it and my contribution to it, and how it applies to my specific context, and how my context can apply elsewhere, or what I apply in my context, whether it needs to be justified or developed or changed to apply elsewhere. I think it's like an ongoing developmental process.
Right. And one of the things that and I will take you to task now about this reflexivity. I will force you going forward now to go even deeper into your own sort of sedimented knowledge, and what kind of transformative action should actually come out from that kind of thinking, which I think you do not actually elaborate sufficiently in the thesis. I know how the thesis project is, so I know that it's not always encouraged, in a sense, to take this critical thinking too far. Let's put it this way. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that you set out to critique, and already in the pre-examination phase, I wrote to you that I think that one of the most interesting parts of your thesis is when you start to write and critique the sort of Westernocentric approach to responsible management education, as manifested, for example, in the so-called universal values of the principles of responsible management education, but also, in a sense, you allude, but a little bit less critically perhaps, to the role of accreditations and so forth. So at point you say that that there are certain value assumptions, there are certain presuppositions underpinning and framing prime, which are not generic, but rather based on a progressive Western model. So that is something you say in your thesis yourself. I agree with that. I agree with that critique very, very strongly. And you sort of, how do you say, support this kind of critique that says that the model of prime assumes globally shared values, priorities, which in fact may be irrelevant to a certain extent to non-Western context. So I'm very positive about this kind of approach. But I'm a little bit surprised where this in the thesis itself, where it goes or it doesn't go. And the surprise comes from the fact that I don't think you make good enough effort in breaking free from the Anglo-Saxon world, in the sense you yourself in your when you do the literature search, at least in the previous version, you look at the most cited articles, the top ranked journals, and so forth, but you don't actually try to break free from this kind of Anglo-Saxon dominance by going more deeply into the alternative worlds that are being painted up in other parts of the world. This might be part of a language issue. My point is that, for example, in South America, there is lots and lots of work that is not published, for example, in the best journals and conforming, in a sense, to the Anglo-Saxon world of what is considered best research and so forth. And there is also the whole body of post-colonial literature. There is a growing body of decolonial, decolonial thought that particularly looks at how would we need to decolonize the curriculum in order for the global South to have a voice and so forth. But you choose not to go there. You state the critique, but you yourself do not take yourself to task of breaking free of the Anglo-Saxon dominance and the best so-called best knowledge that is being produced, the most cited research. Actually, you reproduce this almost uncritically. So please explain yourself.
Yeah, I agree with you, especially since I've also read a number of studies published by actually they were in Spanish, published by South American authors, and they're very intriguing, and some of them actually predicted the whole transformation into a more responsible and morally valuable education years before it was ever introduced by the United Nations Global Compact. And that's why but maybe me too, as an academic, I'm falling into the pressures, these isomorphic pressures of academia that give reverence and value to peer-edited and highly ranked peer-edited articles published in high-ranked journals. And part of it is, I believe, that for publication to reach a high-ranked journal, it has to go through a series of, I guess, filtration and evaluations that and certain criteria. Yeah, some of these criteria are Western-centric or a little bit biased, but at least most of these publications are free from sometimes, when you read the articles that are not published in good journals, or I don't want to say good journals, top-ranked journals, or journals that from the lists, you discover that they don't have a strong argument sometimes. They don't really contribute with specific knowledge, and so it's not easy locating articles that have such kind of value. So to some extent, I'm also falling under this normative kind of isomorphic pressure to conform and also deal with what everybody else is dealing with in the academic community. I'm not saying this is correct, because, as I said, I admit reading far better work in Spanish articles after being translated, of course. But I never assumed that I would have it would be acceptable for me to cite non-English written articles, or to cite something that is not published in a top-ranking journal. So maybe I'm fighting something that I'm actually doing myself, falling into the same mistake.
Yeah, and again, this is this is how it is. This is the reality that you and me live in. It's the reality that Anders lives in, and it's the reality that almost anyone at the business school lives in. My point is, in a sense, that when you display this kind of critical reflexivity, that you clearly are able to examine and unsettle also certain of your own assumptions and your actions and your impacts. I think if you would take the thinking a little bit further than you actually do in your thesis, it would be even more valuable in a sense. Because I don't agree that you can't find these texts or only in low-ranked journals and such. I think it has something to do with how you do the search criteria. I think you are too narrow in how you do, and you yourself, you want to only look at those that have been cited the most. Now, is it a very big surprise that those that are cited the most are those that represent the mainstream the most? In human relations, organization studies, and so forth, you can find really good critical stuff that comes in from this kind of decolonial. So it is, in a sense, a choice that you have made of limiting yourself. And I understand why you do it, but perhaps there should have been a little bit more self-reflexivity about what comes out from that kind of thought process that you now also told us. I mean, it becomes salient because you yourself criticize others for this. So that's why, in a sense, I come back to this notion of, if you criticize, in a sense, that others are producing mainstream Western thoughts, and you yourself make very little effort to break free of that, then we must ask certain questions about what the sort of imperative is that you are painting up for us. So that was my first comment / question. The other is the following. I will be a little bit provocative, as you must in these kinds of situations. What happens if we take this thought process a little bit further? There is a very famous book that you have actually not cited by Professor Martin Parker, who is, in a sense, someone who is publishing in these kind of top journals and based also in one of these elite business schools in the UK. He has written a book that is called Shut Down the Business School. And we can, of course, reflect upon how that is relevant or not. But my point is the following. I think he makes a fairly compelling argument that if we take your argument as being real, and also a little bit what Anders was saying, that then there is a very strong normative imperative to actually shut down the business school, because there is evidence, historical evidence, that business schools are mostly reactionary in their work. They are not going to transform anything, and the social value that they are going to produce is very limited, in a sense. It's very limited. How would you say, you yourself call about a post-material values, a paradigmatic shift to post-material values. I posit that this shift will never come from a business school. You can never have post-material values as the sort of fundament in a business school. So I would like you to respond to that, and I would like you also to respond to Martin Parker's suggestion that perhaps there is no need for business school. There is nothing particular about the kind of vocabulary that we provide, the kind of solutions that we provide to actually provide a solution to these kind of endemic sort of human life species threatening devices that are being, or discourses that are being produced. There is nothing particular about our vocabulary. There is nothing particular about our knowledge. All of this can be done in a university. You don't need a business school at all. So respond to this critique, please.
Actually, I would disagree that in order to change the rhetoric, to change what's happening, I mean, in order to make the transformation and to connect leadership and management with core values, with societal needs, with even global needs and SDGs. It starts in the business school. We have to change the rhetoric in the business school. We have to change the commodification of management education. We shouldn't be teaching these outdated and limited theories of neoliberalism and managerialism and theories that are hinging on the idea of material wealth and profit maximization and not accounting for responsibility-based practices. And so this has to happen in the business school. It won't happen outside. And obviously, because it's not happening enough in the business school, we're graduating leaders and managers who are only thinking in this limited conceptualization of the success of the business is by profit or financial attributes or the like. And it also goes into integrating these values in the business school administrative and operational and you know the hidden curricula also. It's not enough to just teach students good ways of moral behavior and to introduce them to teach them how to resist and apply more sustainable approaches to their businesses. But it's also important to for the business school to embody that or to show it in their own practices. So it's not that I'm just selling, it's not some kind of marketization or image promotion. I should demonstrate equity, ethics, responsibility in my hiring criteria, in my codes of ethics, even in promotions, in providing financial backing and motivation and incentives to support teams that are driving for change. I should have also a research agenda that serves not only the market based needs of the society, but also the humanitarian and the socialist, the ecological and other deeds. And so there has to be this marriage between traditional business thinking and the more moral or ethical way of or sustainable way of thinking. So, I mean, we need business schools to develop the students' sustainability mindset, their critical thinking, their analytical skills, how to solve issues in action through experiential learning, and we need to develop different methodologies that are more dynamic and interactive and responsive, yes, to the needs of the world. I don't know if I covered it.
Right. A brief follow-up question, because you yourself said that, we should, take these things into account in our hiring decisions. We should publish more in those kinds of journals that are, receptive. We should, I think every academic that I've met, no matter in which area they are in, acknowledge this as, correct, or the kind of values that they would like to promote. Then there is a difference, of course, in terms of how you act upon this imperative. You yourselves, I think, quite clearly, I mean, you are a young, soon postdoc scholar in a sense, you yourself said that, well, I have no alternative, I need to publish in top-ranked journals. But you assume, in a sense, that others have a choice, a freedom of action that might actually not be there. For example, in hiring processes, you mentioned accreditations. I would also criticize you a little bit for how you seem, in a sense, to believe in accreditations, perhaps a little bit more than some, or at least in their role that they can have in transforming things to a more sustainability. And this takes me to my last point of critique of your thesis. You start off by saying things like, there is the neoliberal university, there is Western-centric thinking that leads to kind of marketization, leads to neoliberalism, and so forth. But one of the neoliberal discourses that you yourself reproduce quite uncritically is the notion of agency and the possibility of intrapreneurship, the entrepreneurial self, how you can self-realize, how you can change from within, and so forth, which is a discourse that we can recognize, for example, from the CSR discourse in terms of how poverty should be solved. People should become entrepreneurs, but they don't actually take into account the restrictions of the system itself. That if you are an entrepreneur in Ethiopia or something like that, there is an inherently sort of repressive regime that is kind of a combination of authoritarianism with sort of the marketization of the Western world. But you are leading us to believe that we should actually focus on systemic questions when it comes to the university, that what is missing somehow from literature insofar is actually a focus on the individual intrapreneur. I would say that someone said in the beginning that you need to be consistent about making commas and so forth, but I would say that it's about consistency in thinking, perhaps more so, because if you on the one hand want to make a systemic critique, and that's fine, but then you suggest action that is almost exclusively individualized, then there is not a consistency in the logic. Shouldn't you be calling for systemic action in a more traditional sense?
No, in part of the review, I focused on
Excuse me. Hello. I need to pitch in. I'm sorry. 3 more minutes. I'm sorry, I have to do this.
Yeah, that's sufficient. I don't have
very quickly.
I don't have any more questions, Riina, so I'll let the candidate answer.
That's super interesting, but they'll fire me if I don't do this.
Okay, sorry. Yeah,
I did introduce the idea. Extreme, I have to say.
Yeah. Okay, I'll quickly respond. I did introduce the idea of change agents and academic entrepreneurs as being key to the transformation process, because they have the power to develop, to innovate, to sustain the responsible management education transformations. Of course, they're not alone, and they have to be supported with a whole ecosystem of government support institutions, I guess, other entities, even other with students and other colleagues, even within the same department. I'm just saying that they play a fundamental role. And once we invest in the academic entrepreneur, they have the power to change. They can develop curricula, pedagogies, research, collaboration projects and partnerships. They are key. But this does not exclude the fact that they will not be able to survive within the wrong RME ecosystem. And this is what I touched upon at the end of the dissertation when I talked about how different institutional logics interfere with the process. There's resistance from maybe the government, higher administrative levels within the same university, resistance even within the department with colleagues, and even resistance with the students. Students don't want to exert the extra effort and work on projects and come up with elaborative ideas and analysis and extra assignments. They don't want to do this. And so I see the academic entrepreneur as a key agent that will be able to motivate others, to develop the materials and the strategy necessary, even to convince administrative and other policymakers. But that does, as I said, within the proper ecosystem. Is that okay?
Okay. I guess I scared both of you.
Oh God. What do you think, Professor? I mean, you have further ideas to comment on.
Professor, Dr. Solitander, if you want to reply, sorry, I'm taking my word back.
No,
I just got
I thought,
they're not going to fire me, so if you want to.
Yeah, that sounds good as well, Riina. I'm happy to hear that the system is not yet such that if we go over 5 minutes, you are indeed fired. That would be a little scary. But yeah, that's fine. I think you responded to my question, and that's fine for me. And as I told Riina, this was my last question/comment. So thank you for all the responses and reflections.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Very, very interesting debate. Very interesting, honestly. So the next point on the agenda, which I have written down here, is that questions posed by the members of Defence Committee and the audience. And since the Defence Committee comes first, and I am a member of the Defence Committee, so I'm taking this privilege to take a few, I don't know how many minutes actually, let's see, and pick your brain a bit more, Hala, on I actually, you know, in a way we can say we will be solving a problem which I've been struggling with for a long time. So maybe if you can solve my personal problem, then that would be nice. I looked at from what I understand, the triple bottom line. What was it? Social equity, ecology, economic viability, if I'm not mistaken, serves as a basis for the development of many things in your in your thesis. And when we are putting this into the context of the business school, then actually the only thing which honestly makes a lot of sense to me is the economic viability. And but I will explain why. So the reason being that I think that the ecology protection as such, from where I come from with my worldview, and also with a not so small degree of cynicism, but I think given my age, I can be cynical already, is a window dressing thing to be more popular, to, you know, it's like this popularity context, who can protect the ecology more. And but the ultimate, or the ulterior motive after the ecological protection of most companies, if not all companies, is at the end of the day still to make the whole thing economically much more viable. But be that as it may, I actually wanted to go to social equity, a part of the you know, another one of the triple bottom line things. And with this question, I'm also sending my very best wishes to my very good colleague Kaire Puder. In terms of equity, in a way, is the same as fairness and equality, isn't it? When things are fair. So how do you think, or how would you imagine a business school which is having to make ends meet to survive, even not for the profit maximization purpose, but basically let's take the minimum program to survive. How can it ensure social equity? How can it indeed make sure that it is accessible to everybody? And now I'm going a little bit more, you know, more towards the ontological stand which I take, is that I think that generally life isn't fair. Some are born rich and some are poor. Some are born more beautiful than the others. Some are more advantaged than the others. So how does that ontological viewpoint really translate into the social equity thing of the triple bottom line. So how would you comment on that? Because for me, if we put it all together, it adds up to kind of a nonsense. Sorry for the strong word.
Not really. No, not really. Because part of social equity is which is an underlying value in responsible management education, is to maintain supportive, I'll just give an example, to maintain supportive, sustainable, ethical, and responsible human resource management policies. So that, for instance, there is fair incentivization, there is fair promotion, there is fair support for different, let's say, initiatives, whether they're for research or for developing materials or for, different agency. And so having fair policies, having equitable access to resources, having support, departmental support, incentives, having some people struggle within their business schools and outside, I guess, to fulfill their responsibilities in an equitable manner. I think there has to be this sustainable human resource management. That is an example. If we're talking also about ecology, there's this big divide between what businesses are doing in the world today in terms of corruption, pollution, devastation of resources, and unethical practices, and how the ecology is or the environment is suffering. We can just look at how the COVID-19 has exposed so much of the irresponsible and unethical practices of top corporations who were after materialistic gain at the expense of humanitarian and human welfare. People are fighting over loads of masks and access to vaccines and giving priorities to on the basis of social status in some countries. I'm not talking about only about the Europe or the Western world. I'm talking about assuming a more global understanding of issues and understanding the extent of damage a corporation, whether it is founded in a European or non-European or Western or non-Western locale, how it influences the culture, the practices, and the welfare of other people around the world. So it's not a matter of window dressing my curricula or my website or my practices by saying, oh, I'm sustainable, we're saving water, and we have this recycle facility in the university. It's more about making the connection of how I can seriously, as an individual, be damaging and where I need to stop. As an individual, as a corporation, and even as a business school. Today, we're graduating very irresponsible, materialistic, self-centered graduates who are not really contributing to the welfare and the development of for future generations. And I think education has a role to play here, that there has to be change.
Thank you, Hala. Just to maybe, to cheer everybody up, particularly you and also maybe myself. And I think that the last thing that you said about, today we're graduating people such as that and that. And I think that's not necessarily true anymore. I have a feeling that, I'm not really even a feeling.
It's changing.
I think that your rhetoric, the way you put it, is maybe a little bit like a decade old, maybe like 10 years old. Because I think...
Not necessarily, because it's still happening. We're experiencing this in COVID. It's happening that there are unethical and irresponsible actions today.
but perhaps there are also ethical and responsible actions, and the reason why we are hearing about the irresponsible and unethical actions is because this is what we are hearing. This is what we are being fed to, and we are being fed to this particular rhetoric because this is what people usually want to read and hear. So essentially, the question is, it's like I gave an example to a good friend of mine a few days ago, is that what we are hearing day in, day out.
It froze. I didn't hear you.
I don't, where do I go back to then now? Anyway, what I was saying is that I think the reason why we are hearing that, can you hear me now, Hala? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes. It's a little delayed.
So
okay.
Okay, so what I was saying is that I think we are hearing the unethical and the irresponsible today because this is what is being fed to us. And it is being fed to us because people in general prefer to hear news which are bad rather than good. So essentially what we hear is that 5,000 people died. This is the common, so to say, news, but we never hear 5,000 people died, but 5 million lived. Okay, so you see, we form our opinions based on what is being fed to us, has always been the case. So, but when I look at what people write, when I look at what students learn, when I look at how they turn out, when I listen to their conversations, when I read their thesis, when I, just observe, I think we are. I think the change is there, and things are much more positive than the way maybe that you have described it.
Let me just add that I'm not saying that across the board all graduates are irresponsible or unethical. I'm saying that we're still living in a world that requires attention to certain issues that are being overlooked. And unless we put a little bit of spotlight on these issues, not everybody will be aware of them and responsive to them and take positive action towards them. And I think as business schools, we have a better role to play.
I may sound very dramatic and unhopeful, but I think that I have a feeling there will always be issues to deal with. So this is just the issue we're dealing with now. When this goes away, if this goes away, another one will come along. But now I will stop being very egoistic. Thank you, Hala, for the answers. Yeah. And I will now go to look at the questions that have come from the audience. Kaisa, where are they? Okay, so I currently have a few questions, and the first one comes from Professor Tiit Telenurm at Estonian Business School. And the question is as follows, Hala, and the audience. How education for responsible management focused on sustainable environment protection should be different in developing countries compared to advanced market economies? That?
I think, yeah, I understand the point. I guess with every context comes specific strategies and approach, because if we look at different regions in the world, they don't all suffer from the same ecological or environmental needs and circumstances. Even within a certain context, there are many political, social, economic factors that influence decisions. And so if I'm studying sustainability or ecology, or how to manage them, I mean, from a local perspective, I need to really focus on the context and on how different stakeholders within the context perceive the issues, contribute to the problem, contribute to solutions, the power they have, how they can collaborate, channels. There are so many different criteria, but the key criteria is focusing on the role of stakeholders and agency, and how to employ this within the given contextual background or locale, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Meanwhile, before I read the next question, Anders had a hand, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I just wanted to add to your previous question, Riina. It seems that all members of the committee have kind of, they are more cynical than what you are, Hala. And so in a way, it's good that the candidate is less cynical, but I maintain my idea that you should actually write something about this. But now I think the title, I have changed the title. So now the title for you is Responsible Management Education, Avoiding Window Dressing.
Okay. That is very ambitious. That's very ambitious. I don't think it can be done. I think that's an impossibility, Anders. But you know,
not really. But because if we look at some of the prime champions, some of the schools in the prime champion group, that is an arm of the United Nations Global Compact. Some of these business schools have really demonstrated advanced performance in integrating ethics, sustainability, and responsibility into not only their curricula, but also their performance, their operations, their outreach activities, their collaboration and partnerships with different entities. And I've seen exemplar practices that I guess should be shared with other schools to show that there is positivity in this rhetoric. It's not empty rhetoric. As you said, we're graduating students that are far better informed and far more aware of sustainability issues. But are they empowered? Are they capable of change? And this is, I think, important when you focus on the tools, not only the critical thinking and the mental or theoretical background, but also the tools in terms of how to create different business models, how to create different strategies to solve real life situations. And I've seen this in many very successful business schools. And so they're really talking action.
Okay, thank you. And you know, looking at the time, which is really a drag here. Now I've lost the other questions. Here they are. So Professor Jukka Mäkinen has two questions, and since I'm guiding the show kind of and looking at the watch, I will take just one, and I wonder which one. This one. So Hela, why business schools and business managers are in good position to address social issues? The dominant business school theories, like agency theory, do not trust managers.
So
would you like me to repeat? Would you like me to repeat? Okay. So Professor Mäkinen is asking why are business schools and business managers in a good position to address social issues? Because the dominant business school theories, such as agency theory, do not trust managers.
Yeah, well, this is what we need to change. This is the transformation required to move from the idea that managers or corporations in general are after profit maximization. They don't really care about the ecology or the society or other humanitarian issues, and to change this vision into no, they do have the power, and every decision they make impacts the society and the ecology and the economy. So it's not that we should continue to distrust them for their irresponsible behaviors or decisions in the past. It's best to shift light onto better practices and more responsible practices. And there are so many exemplar situations of corporations that have not only a CSR agenda or like a humanitarian or social impact agenda, but also integrate value into their products and services. The idea is that we need to shift focus from this egotistic style of management to a more societal and societally aware kind of management, if that is what Dr. Yuka meant.
Okay, thank you, Hala. I am now wondering, Dr. Solitander, Professor Örtenblad, would you have further questions, anything that you would like to ask or comment on or add, perhaps? Because we still have some...
I can add one thing if that is okay.
Yes,
I don't want to make this sort of a cross-examination of Dr. Koris or indeed anyone else, but then Hala. But I will say as much that I think what we are hearing, Hala, is that there is really a need to expand the moral imaginations of academics at large. We heard that very, very clearly. Now, if the comment to you is that your theories are stuck 10 and 20 years back, then I will retort and saying that some of the things we just heard now are actually going back even further, kind of Friedmanian view of the economy and so forth. But in a sense, it shows, I think, that there is a need to expand people's imaginations and what is possible within the business school. And perhaps this is where you should take your research when going forward, being a little bit sort of bolder and so forth. I know a lot of people say that once I get the doctoral degree, I will start to do truly transformative research because then all bets are off. But we know that what comes after that is even more restrictive sort of time in a researcher's life. So I would just encourage you to keep on being very reflexive, very critical, but very precise also, and precise in your thinking and constantly develop your ideas further, so that we don't end up with kind of discourses of climate denialism or denying, in a sense, the loss of biodiversity and so forth, because we here heard some to some extent also people denying that kind of development and saying things that I don't feel are particularly linked in scientific research as such. So yes, keep science in mind, and I wish you all the best in the future.
Yeah, I totally agree. The idea of changing the rhetoric and encouraging more moral imagination, that is really important. And that means somehow changing curricula so that they're not disconnected. And also practices and other projects and everything, not only the curricula.
Okay. Professor Örtenblad, anything to add or... Okay, thank you. We will continue from here then, and I would like to give the floor now to the screen to the supervisors. So usually it's ladies first, but for some reason they told me Olav first and then Mari, so I obey. So Olav, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Riina. I'm ready.
So we have 5 minutes. 5 minutes altogether, Olav and Mari, 5 minutes, so 2.5 and 2.5.
Right.
Stickler for
Right.
details. Okay.
Honorable members of the Defense Committee, the audience, dear Hala. Hala's dissertation has number 37, which means that, yeah, 36 defenses have occurred and actually took place during the previous 20 years. Why I'm saying so is that for me, and I do hope it's not only for me, it's a very important moment today because some months ago, actually a bit more, the Research and Development Council took a decision to make an important move, meaning involving the opponents already in the pre-defense phase. My opinion from today's defense is that this was a very good move indeed, because the opponents really contributed a lot in improving the dissertation itself. And second, I very much liked this debate we had, this academic debate we had today, comparing with, let's say, most of the defenses during the previous 20 years, which more or less followed kind of very strict script known already to all participants. So I'm happy about this change. Now, a couple of words about Hala's dissertation. So she didn't come to EBS in 2016 with this topic, but during the first year and a half, she systematically moved to the topic which she presented today. So I appreciate her, let's say, goal-orientedness and dedication, and thank you, Hala, for this. It has been a pleasure to work with you. And what I wish, it's actually somewhat rephrasing what Dr. Solitander just said. I wish you more self-confidence in your further academic career. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you,
Professor.
Olav. Thank you so much, Olav. So, Mari, please, the screen is all yours.
Yes, now it's mine. So, first of all, I would like to thank Riina for this professionally led defense process. And of course, both of the opponents, Professor Anders Örtenblad and Nikodemus Solitander, for this very interesting, enriching, and intriguing academic debate that we have seen today. I have really enjoyed this discussion, and yes, there have been also times when I would have to would like to also say something as well, but this was definitely Hala's job today, and I thank everyone for making it so interesting and also putting it on academically so high level. This is something what I have really have been looking for to see also at EBS during those defense processes. And we can say that every PhD journey is special, with its own ups and downs. It is always interesting. It is enriching to those who are on this path and also to those who are going along. This can be also definitely said about Hala's PhD process. And I'm really glad that I have been able to be there and help there. And even more, during this process, she has become more than just a PhD student for me. She has become a dear friend and a colleague. And I'm really hoping that we will have new opportunities for even better collaborations very soon coming up. And when looking at her capabilities of working hard and doing it so fast, I confirm that when there is one person who is who deserves the PhD degree, then this person is Hala. So I sincerely congratulate her for reaching to the end of this process and wish her best luck ever in taking new steps on this very interesting academic path. So thank you, Hala.
Thank you so much.
And all the best.
Thank you. I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mari. Thank you, Olav, who has disappeared for some reason. So what is going to happen now is that Mari already conveyed her congratulations, but I think we still need to retreat with Nikodemus and Anders to our secret room, so to say, to vote. And what I'm inviting Nikodemus and Anders, so we need to leave the VMix call now, and we will reconvene in the Teams room to talk about things, and then we will be back to the others. We will be back in the VMix call room after we have had the conversation and the debate. But the others, enjoy while we're gone. Anyway, see you soon again.
Thank you.
So hey,
She can't see us.
we're good to go, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yes, I think so. Okay, so we had the discussion, we voted, and I have the magic sentence now written all out here. So it says that the defendant of PhD thesis Hala Abdelgaffar received 3 votes in favor and 0 votes against, which means that the defense committee has decided to award the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in Management to Hala Abdelgaffar. I have the privilege to
Thank you.
I have the privilege to send you virtual flowers. And since we've been working so closely over the past months, I have a privilege also to send you a virtual hug to congratulate you that you have successfully closed 1 chapter, which will serve as basis for many other chapters to come in your professional career. So congratulations on my part.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Yes,
this has been an incredible journey, and I was just saying that it would never have been anything without the so many insights and comments and contributions of everyone who has read and commented on the work and added their valuable insights. Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, so the last point actually on the agenda, Hala, is final words by the doctoral. I think that it's not the candidate anymore, so it's final words by the doctor. So if there's anything you would like to say in addition to what you have said already, now is the time.
I basically want to thank everybody involved. I've written a long acknowledgement, but basically I want to thank my supervisors, Professor Olav and Marie. I want to also thank, they've been incredible support, and they've tolerated so much nonsense coming back and forth until we fix so many things. I mean, and thank God these things are not on print anywhere. Of course, I want to also thank all my EBS professors, the administration, the PhD committee, the external defense, the internal reviewers, first of all, and the external reviewers, because everybody has contributed so much. I mean, with every comment and every, I guess, with every comment, it opened new venues for me to discover things and research more and understand different aspects of the topic. And I think that the topic is endless, but it helped me put me on the right track and achieve something that I'm somehow appreciative of and proud of. So thank you all, and I can never thank people enough. I wish I were there to celebrate and thank you. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. I guess this concludes this fairly long and definitely interesting event. So on my part, I would like to thank you. Now everybody's thanking everybody. I'd like to thank you all. And I hope to be looking forward to working with you again together in the future. So have a wonderful rest of the week. Enjoy the spring and particularly the summer. And I hope to see you around again one day.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.